So I recently acquired this Beatles poster from a friend of mine. I hung it up and I thought, I bet this severely increases the number of Beatles in my room. And then I thought, hey, how many Beatles do I have in my room anyway? So here we are. I started this journey thinking it would be a fun, easy thing to do. There can't be that many pictures of the Beatles in my room, right? I can't be that obsessed with a pop band from the 60s that this project actually takes me over a month and drives me insane in the process, right? Right? Well, that aside, this is a fairly interesting question to me. I'm not so obsessed with this band that I have an entire room dedicated to them in my house, like some other people do. Not yet, anyway. However, I do realize that any wall I look at in my room has some form of Beatles memorabilia on it. So really, how many pictures of the lads from Liverpool are there? Lucky for me, I passed AP Calculus, so the College Board has proven that I know how to count. So, let's get started. First, I had to establish some ground rules. What exactly counts as a Beatle in my room anyway? A picture of them obviously counts, but what about drawings of them? What about a silhouette of them? What about this rubber duck dressed like Paul McCartney? With so many options and so many lines blurred about what is and is not a Beatle to be counted, I decided that any representation of them in any capacity counted. So, if there was a picture with a mirror in it showing a reflection, that counted as 2 Beatles. If there was a picture of the Beatles holding a picture of the Beatles, then it would be 8 Beatles. Do you understand what I am saying? Also, I kept track of how many of each Beatle there was, because why not? Wouldn't it be cool to have an exact count of each member? I'm already counting them. What a fun and not at all annoying question! I didn't count any pictures on my phone or anything. It needed to be physical. So, sorry iPod Touch lock screen, you do not get to be a part of the count. And with these rules in mind, I was off. I started simple, counting the Beatles hanging up on my walls, you know, the posters that started this whole idea in the first place. That was easy enough. I just walked around my room and found the posters with the Beatles on them. This Beatles 1 poster was tricky because I know for a fact that it is double-sided and it is this poster on the back. And oh Ringo, I almost missed you on this one. The only other tedious thing to count in this category was the poster that started it all. And with the help of this trusty tally app, I was able to conclude that there were 536 Beatles on this poster. So now realizing that I had increased the Beatles count in my room by over 500 when I added this, I was pretty impressed. This feeling would quickly fade. Next I went to my CD collection, where I have every single Beatles studio album on CD. Now this should be pretty easy, right? Just look at the cover and count? No. There's entire CD booklets inside of these things, with some of them being pretty extensive. And also, did you ever wonder how many Beatles were on the cover of Revolver? I didn't, but I know now. It's 34. You're welcome. And this meant that anything with a picture of Revolver in it would add 34 to the total. Also, these remastered promo booklets were so annoying. Look at how long they are. I have 2 of them, and each one has 309 Beatles on them. Also, inside the CD booklet for the Beatles 1 CD was the poster I just hung up. You know, the poster that started this whole thing. Except it was way more. I couldn't believe it. The poster that had given me this idea was basically already in my room in CD booklet form. I counted 704 Beatles in this thing. I thought that the poster was going to be the single most Beatle-heavy item in my room, but I've already proven that this is not the case, and will disprove that original theory multiple times over. Also, this booklet to the Magical Mystery Tour got wet, and are you doing okay there, buddy? Are you okay? You're looking a little rough. At the end of the CD counting, I had a total of 2,137. That's a lot, and somehow I still did not understand the gravity of what I would be undertaking. To fit with the physical music theme, I counted my vinyls next. Honestly, this wasn't very hard. There were no annoying booklets inside of any of them that I had to count, so everything was pretty simple. Then I went around my room and looked for other random objects with the Beatles on it. These Hot Wheel cars are pretty awesome, but for this exercise they were a little bit inconvenient because I had to assume that the pattern on the front was also on the back. I wasn't about to open them. They've been sealed for like years. I'm just thankful there isn't a revolver themed car because that would have been so much work. Also, I can't forget the sticker on my laptop. That's a silhouette, which, as we established, definitely counts. And look at this cool hanging mobile thing, and also this pillow, and also these random playing cards someone gave me once because they had the Beatles on it, and also these decals I bought from Half Price Books, and then never opened, and then had to assume that inside were only the decals and no other pictures of them. Oh, and that's all the random things. Anyway, now is the time that I was dreading. Over the years, people have gifted me Beatles books, which is very kind of them, except I didn't read most of them, because it is kind of like the same story over and over and over and over again once you start reading multiple. So this was kind of the first time that I had gone through some of them page by page. Sometimes I even read the words on those pages. While I'm thankful that this exercise has allowed me to become more acquainted with my Beatles book collection, I am not thankful for how long this took. You might say, Rose, do you need to count every single picture inside of these books? Just count the cover. When these books are on your shelf, you don't even see the insides anyway. And to that I say, have you missed the entire point of this exercise? The whole idea is to see how many Beatles are in my room. These pictures inside these books are Beatles in my room. It isn't about whether or not I can see them. And yeah, it was very tedious, but I would not be able to sleep at night knowing I left out pictures of the Beatles from this count, lying to you and myself about the final number. To not count these, it would be the equivalent of the original Let It Be documentary and the new Get Back documentary. Sure, it would be a perfectly reasonable account to my original question. However, it would be missing crucial information that would change the narrative entirely. And with that, I got to counting. And you know what? Let's make this a Beatles book report, because even though I still haven't read most of these books, I have opinions on them now. I started off with this book, titled The Beatles, very descriptive, by Terry Burroughs. Now, I may be biased because this is the first book I read of my collection, but it's a pretty good Beatles book if you're looking for one to read. It has all the info you need, a whole bunch of pictures, and it is well laid out. And also, it didn't take very long to count the Beatles in it, which I appreciated. Next I counted A Hard Day's Right. It gets extra points for the fact that it is a pun. It's also a pretty good book. I think anyway. I haven't read it. It's a detailed description of every Beatles song ever written, which comes in handy if I'm doing research on a specific Beatles song, but as a book to read, it's kind of a lot of info, and it's too much. It's too much. I'm not gonna read it. It's too much. This Ringo book is also a book I haven't read, but in my defense, I've been planning on reading it for 6 years since I got it, so maybe one day I'll give it a shot. However, I was reading the introduction because I noticed that it wasn't by Ringo Starr, it was by someone else. But the author who wrote it dropped some tea in the introduction. Apparently, he asked Ringo if he could interview him for this book, and then Ringo ghosted him and then posted on Facebook, "There is an unauthorized biography being written by Michael Starr, and I want my friends and fans to know that it has nothing to do with me. I'm not participating with it at all. Peace and love, Ringo." Well then, this next book, 50 Years with the Beatles, is very fun. I really like how it's laid out. It's collagey and fun, and there's a whole bunch of detail, and it's just really great to look at the pages, and the copies I read were pretty good. It also had the second highest Beatles count for all the books at 1,637 Beatles, which was tedious, especially considering it's not even close to being the thickest Beatles book that I own. So, if you are looking for a Beatles book with the most Beatles for your buck, buy this one. And oh, look, it's Beatles anthology. We'll come back to that one later. I also have this magazine I bought when Paul turned 75, mainly to celebrate the occasion, but I'd rather talk about a different book. I'd rather talk about With the Beatles by Bob Whittaker. I have read this book, and I just think it is so cool. I never really thought about the people who would travel with them to document them or whatever, especially during this period of time in their career. I thought it was really, really interesting. If I had to get rid of all of my Beatles books except for like one, this one might actually be the one that I kept. I also have this vintage Beatles book I found in an estate sale. As a Beatles book, it isn't very good because it isn't laid out chronologically for some reason, and also it's from 1975, so it actually is the only Beatles book that I own that does not mention any of their deaths. Also, it is cool to me to like see how stuff was laid out before like computers and Photoshop. Like the cutouts in this are like actually cut out with scissors, and I just like to look at like the typefaces and stuff. I know that's like so nerdy, but like that's mainly why I got this one. I just like to see how bookmaking was before computers. It's cool. All right, so that's all the books. It wasn't that hard and tedious after all. All right. Anthology. Anthology is no joke. If you're as big of a Beatles fan as I am, it is the perfect book to have in your collection. I love how it is like a mishmash of like the Beatles' own words. It's super comprehensive, and maybe one day I will read it all. I know I enjoyed reading the snippets when I was counting, and as a Beatles book, it's probably the best one just because of how comprehensive it is. There really is no stone left unturned when it comes to anthology. Counting the Beatles in this one sucked. There are just so many pages in this book, and a lot of them are collages with like tens of pictures on them. I would sit and count, and then count some more, and then get tired and take a break, and then count some more, and because I decided to figure out how many of each Beatle there was, I also took that into account. Any group of four, I just put on the tally counter, but if there was a situation with less than that, and there were many situations, I would write that down on my spreadsheet. I got so good at mental addition. What is 36 plus 9? What is 57 plus 8? I know how to add these things in my head now. These types of problems were previously only calculator material because I'm so bad at mental math. This is a breakthrough! If I knew how long this was going to take, I would have timed it, but I can tell you that I had to split this up over multiple days. Over 360 pages of constant counting, and math can wear a person down. And then I got to page 210. This alternate concept for revolver was on the page twice. I can't tell how many Beatles are on this thing, and some of them are covered up. When I tell you I died inside when I got to this page, I was already broken by the previous 209 pages, and then I see this. How am I supposed to count this? I'm going to be honest, I do not remember what math I used to guesstimate how many Beatles are on this one, but I know that it can't have been exact. Honestly, at this point, it was good enough. So, because of page 210, take the final number with a grain of salt. Eventually, I got to the end though. I powered through and reached it. The tedium of this book took everything out of me. But I come to you on the other side victorious. I can tell you that the number of Beatles in this book is 2,605, with 356 groups of all four, 390 pictures of just John, 291 pictures of just Paul, 297 pictures of just George, and 203 pictures of just Ringo. Well, with the books done, the hard part was behind me. Nothing could compare to that, so I counted everything else really quickly. I have this multimedia shelf that I think would give Daniel Green an aneurysm, but it has some pretty good Beatles knackage, and yes, I did count every single Beatles trading card. Don't worry, they were already open when I got them. Also, did you know that back in the day they used to release singles on like tiny little CDs? That's like the cutest thing ever! I am also an avid Beatles shirt collector and wearer. I did not include every Beatles shirt that I have because obviously some of them don't have the Beatles on them and are just logos. However, this selection of Beatles shirts is like most of them. I think my favorite Beatles shirt that I have is this one I got from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I really like it because it is about one of my favorite deep cut songs. Ooh! Or these shirts for when I saw Paul in concert or Ringo in concert. Those were so fun. Last but not least, I dove into the depths of my camp memorabilia area of my closet. I just wanted to see if some people like gifted me Beatles things. Someone gave me the definitive guide for Beatles fans, which included another book. And this one was kind of the opposite of the 1975 book, as it goes oddly in depth into John's death. Like, I didn't ask to see a picture of John's dying body or the gun that shot him, but that's what happened. Also, look at this cool Beatles cup my friend made for me. She's so nice. And with that is all the places that I can think of that have pictures of the Beatles in my room. I may have missed something, but this final number I got is pretty darn close. It's the closest I can get anyway. So, I guess without further ado, I present to you the final tally. The number of Beatles in my room is 10,499, give or take, with 2,803 being John, 2,715 being Paul, 2,537 being George, and 2,444 being Ringo. I need to go to sleep now.